Welcome to the Dr. Pat Show. Talk radio to thrive by. Powerful, inspiring, and coming to you live, bringing you stories of people like you and me, busting through and living life full out. Get ready to dare to wonder what your life would be like if you knew you could not fail.
Oh, hey, hello, everybody. I am Jennifer Bloome. I have the honor and privilege today of filling in for our very hardworking Dr. Pat. You can usually find me here on Transformation to Talk Radio at my own podcast, which is Soul Wisdom Abundance, Create Wealth Through Spiritual Health. And, on that show, really what we're doing is talking all about my passion, which is around changing our relationships with money. Money is something that we all have to deal with, right? It's one of our oldest relationships, and yet it causes the most consternation in our day-to-day life. And when we start adding in things like consciousness, and when we start adding in things like soul, we start to discover that that relationship can have a lot of possibility. There's a lot of power out there for us to be able to work with and make changes so that we can bring it into our bank account, not just talk about it, not just think about it, but actual tangible changes into the bank account. But of course, just like any other relationship, we can have tiffs with money. We can have our heart broken by money, and it creates really challenging situations in the bottom line. So that is what my guest and I are going to talk about today. So let me introduce you to the fabulous Jennifer Urezzio. She is an author. She is a master prayer writer. She is a master intuitive. Do not have a conversation with this woman if you do not want clarity. It's one of the things I love the most about her. And of course, she is also the founder of Soul Language, which is a paradigm that's all about creating consciousness and tangibility for soul. How do we talk about it on a day-to-day basis? How do we bring it into our lives on a day-to-day basis and understand more about ourselves and more about the relationships we're in? So Jennifer, or JU, since as the two of us are often together, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited and honored and glad to be hanging out with you and talking to you, and kind of speechless about the introduction. So thank you.
Yes, of course. Of course. Well, we are certainly practiced in having these conversations. This is something that's near and dear to both of our hearts. We've done a number of classes together on this topic and continue to have conversations about it. So I suppose, though, the best place to start is at the beginning. So let's talk about this idea of money heartbreak and what that really is. So, well, I'll start by asking you, what do you think about when you think about money heartbreak?
I think it's the same thing with a heartbreak across the board. It's that feeling when you think about a subject or a person or a situation where you actually can feel your heart hurting. It's that feeling of restriction. It's that feeling of overwhelming not enough and pain and suffering. It's that feeling where you don't know or believe or can see yourself feeling differently about a subject. And I think so many of us are silently carrying around that heartbreak and not even aware of that we're having that relationship, that we're having that feeling with money. And you can't create anything new when you're creating based on heartbreak. You're kind of creating on like this quicksand, this movable object that you don't have any sure footing on.
Yeah, very well said. And I think that, it's a really good point about us not really being aware that we actually have heartbreak around money. I think that, anytime you listen to music about money or you watch movies or read books, right, people are always have a lot of really unpleasant things to say about money. We got to work really hard. We have to earn it. We have to deserve it. So there's a certain amount of pain, I think, that's expected around money in ways that we don't expect pain in other relationships.
Agreed. And, also the flip is true as well. I read and listen to these series of books and about Stone Barrington, which it's a mystery. You know how I love those.
Yes.
And he's got all the money in the world, and he just throws around money. And every time he's throwing around money, the first couple of books, I was like, what is he doing? Like, how can he just do that? Like, what does he mean he gets to have like a $50 steak every night? Like I couldn't breathe, right? It's fiction, it's a book, right? Like, but that was also telling me like, oh, there's some serious heartbreak there that I don't believe at that point that I could have that relationship. So I think we just expect it. I think that if you're not actually actively pursuing kind of coming to alignment or healing yourself around that heartbreak, you're going to be creating based on that heartbreak. And with a relationship heartbreak, right, you have a very vivid and clear kind of experience of it. But when money is broken your heart, you suffer, but you kind of just shove it aside and try to move on instead of dealing with that pain. And then when someone is spending money hand over fist, so to speak, or having pain in money, and we witness it, whether it's in movie or in real life, we're reactivating that pain and not consciously aware of how kind of much damage we're doing with ourselves.
True, right? Because creation really comes down to, and when you boil down all of the different laws, it really comes down to expectation, right? What is it that I truly expect? And I mean, there's a lot more we could say about it, but that's a bottom line.
Yeah.
And if we have had the sprinkling of painful situations, then that's what we expect. So we either don't do anything about it, or we just sort of go along thinking, well, that's the way it's going to be, whether there's a trickle of money, or even if you're somebody who, is working 80 hours, 100 hours a week to bring in all the cash that you want, but there's still that pain, there's still that expectation that it's going to be something that's going to be hard.
Yeah, and you know what I find fascinating is that when we're kind of dealing with that or not dealing with it, we are tainting the well. So we're not even aware of how much we're kind of adding that. And you talked about having neutrality or expecting it. And as a master prayer writer, I know that every word is a declaration. It's a kind of a nail in that kind of construction of what you want to create. So, I've now become fiercely aware of when I'm declaring lack, or when I'm on heartbreak, or when I'm declaring, that I'm an unlimited being. And I think so often we get to play with situations so we're not, it's not a do or die situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, some of the things that can create heartbreak, let's just chat about that a little bit, just to be, to bring it into clarity. I mean, you can have things like, you can have extremes, right? Bankruptcy, which I have played around with myself. It can be losing a job. It can be getting an inheritance and then having that inheritance go away.
Or not getting one.
Or not getting that inheritance you thought you were going to get, right? It can be having a disagreement between colleagues, right? I mean, there's lots of different ways that money can sneak in there and start to break your heart.
Yeah, I've had the $5,000 contract break up. Like, what do you mean you don't believe in this work? We signed the contract. Well, technically I signed the contract, so I'm on the hook for the $5,000. Like,
Yeah.
what? And I think so often, especially if growing up, if your parents have been fighting with money, you're going to see a lot of that heartbreak right out in the open, and not have the consciousness or the tools to go, wait, no, that's not mine. Or I don't need to ingest that. I don't need to build on that. There's a lot of ways that money, and we're not talking about money, we're talking about our experience with it and our thoughts around it, can actively break our hearts. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good point. It doesn't even have to be ours to start with. right? And if you have a family history with difficulty with money, or even parents who disagreed with how to handle that money, right? How much money was to be saved, how much money was to be spent, should you go on vacation? Maybe you had a parent that controlled around money, right? That somebody was supposed to only have an allowance, or spent money in ways that they didn't think the other person should. All of that gets absorbed into our really young minds that are just like a sponge.
Yeah, I grew up with two parents that were both bankers.
Mhm.
And periodically in my 20s, I would go off, and that is the correct terminology. I would yell at bank tellers, like, oh, maybe I should deal with that, right?
Maybe.
You know? So it's really about just being this era of discovery without judgment and without blame. And so you can kind of create this unification between you and this thing called money, which is one of the divine's amazing resources for us.
Absolutely, because the opposite of money heartbreak, at least to me, is this understanding of wealth consciousness. And within that idea of wealth consciousness is that ability to connect in with the divine and really have that unlimited showing of financial resources.
Yeah, and because you have that connection, you don't really care. Meaning you're
Right.
not basing your essential nature, you're not basing your love, you're not basing who you are on what shows up in your bank account, and that's extremely freeing.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so this is fantastic. We've laid a really nice groundwork, I think, for like that's maybe that new concept, like money heartbreak. What is that? But we need to go ahead and take a short break here. But when we come back, let's start talking about helping people identify their own money heartbreak and start talking about what can we do about it. Right. So you are listening to the Dr. Pat Show. I am Jennifer Bloome, your host, and we will be back momentarily. Great choice. Great choice, Betty. Thank you. All right. I am Jennifer Bloome. We are back from break. I've got my guest here, Jennifer Urezzio, and we are talking about heartbreak and money and where it comes from. So, all right, I think we've covered that pretty well. So you know, how let's talk a little bit about how it actually shows up. Like when you are living from this place and creating from this place of heartbreak, what kinds of things are going on in your day-to-day financial affairs that are causing disruption in what could be coming into your bank account?
I think it's the constant worry,
Hmm.
the constant when's next dollar going to come. It's that constant juggling to, as they say, steal from Peter to pay Paul. I think I'm using the right saints. Um, it's that feeling of that you are at this war with relationship with money, that money has some sort of power over you, that only those people get money, that it's all those feelings of that wanting, longing, desire, and never going to be able to attain it. That's what I've seen for myself and others around heartbreak and money.
Yeah. I would agree with all of that. And I'd add to it a little bit of the, financial blinders. Like, I don't even want to look at it. Yeah, I could tell when I was in the midst of really bad heartbreak when the letters from the IRS or bills started to stack up, and it was terrifying to even open them, and I would open one and it would just be, hey, we had a phone conversation, blah 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 blah. I'm like, oh, okay, right. But there's a lot of power, and you mentioned that, right? And I think that's an important part to speak about, that we give so much power to money and to the them and the they, whoever them and they are, that's in control, right? We forget that we are actually in control, which leads to things like letting the bills stack up and or the opposite, right? Which is, I feel really awful, so let's go spend some money, right? That's another way. It's really it's really separating ourselves from our consciousness around money.
Yes.
That is what's showing up.
Yeah, and it's also, it's always like another sign is that you're trying to find money in all the wrong places, right? Like, you're desperate for it.
Yeah.
And so you're having all these bad relationship experiences with money. So, one of the things that I did when I was in my 20s and 30s, I would constantly lose my wallet. And not small lose my wallet, like in the house, like lose it at the airport,
Ugh, yeah.
or put it in my luggage somewhere and then I can't find it because I can't remember I put it in my luggage. And then I have to ask people to, like, because now I don't have my credit card, so can you pay the bill and I can pay you back? Like, still makes me cringe a little,
Yeah.
right? Like, oh. And so that was, I was really that was really one of my big things. I would constantly lose money and lose like all of the things geared towards money.
Yeah. I think that, if people are asking themselves, oh, is this me? Do I have heartbreak? I think one of the easiest things to say is, how does it make you feel when you're with money? Overall, what's your experience? How do I feel? Like, woohoo, this is fun, or no, this is painful. I cringe. I feel that knot in my stomach. I have that weight on my shoulders. And if that's your reaction to money, that's pretty good bet that there's been some heartbreak in your past.
Yeah, I used to cringe. I don't cringe. I mean, there's always more expansion. Don't get me wrong, everyone.
Of course.
Right? But I've taken to leaving money like in the console of my car. My mother the other day looked in my, like, I opened my purse and she's like, "What's with all that?" Like banker, ones and 20 all munched up. I'm like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "There's money all." I was like, "Yeah, I just leave it." Like those kind of things, which crack me up. And the other day I had this thought, like, well, am I disrespecting money or am I letting it flow for? So I had a little conversation. And money's like, "You're not disrespecting me, but we could be a little more organized." And I was like, "Oh, okay." But one of the things that I've always loved doing, even when I cringe, was, writing out my bills, doing my check. Like, I love that. And I think that for me was an indication of where I could go. Right.
Mm,
So I think so often um, people are so kind of stuck in their heartbreak that they can't see those little possibility moments. And for me, like when I do my bills, like I love it. I feel so grown up and I feel like
mm.
it's so much fun for me. Like, and I've had to write some large bills, like, oh my God, I got to do that. And I think so often we kind of set the stage for additional heartbreak because we're just kind of assuming we're going to have a bad date with money instead of a good date.
Right. Right. We kind of page back through that the relationship history, right? And it lays again, it's that expectation. So I I'm going to avoid it. I'm going to rush through it. Or alternatively, I'm going to try to buckle it down, right? I'm going to be the one who's in control of money. And there's nothing wrong with a budget.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with watching your spending. There's nothing wrong with having plans. But when you're doing it, it's like, what am I doing it from?
Right.
Am I doing it from this place of, oh,
Yes.
this
Yes.
feels,
Right.
really great, or no, I'm cracking the whip because if I don't, money's going to seep out everywhere, right? We've all had that experience where, woohoo, really great amount of money coming in, and then gosh, there's that bill that comes in that takes all of it. And again, that's another possibility point. I remember several years ago getting a really unexpected check in the mail, and I can't remember now whether it was some sort of real estate refund. I can't remember now what it was. And I swear to goodness, down to the penny, the next day we had the car in for service. That was, I mean, it was eerie, actually, how close they were. I had a choice. I can either get really angry about it, right? So if I'm coming from a place of heartbreak, it's like, this is ridiculous. It's taken everything from me. Or I could say, hey,
Oh my God.
I had a solution before I even knew I had a problem.
Exactly. Like, look at that. Like, I remember sitting on my bed and like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and my American Express was like $1,243.33. It was due the next day, and I was like, I don't have it. Like, oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to make a bill. Like, I'm even like talking about creating heartbreak for others. I'm not going to be able to pay them, and how are they going to pay, blah, blah, right? And this woman who hired me to do a bunch of soul language identifications for a bunch of her clients. And the fee to do that was like 233. Like I had 5 cents left over, and I was like, I can't. Like, this is great. I love it. Like, but also, those opportunities of miracles, you get to go, okay, so let's set up a new pattern. So I'm not having to have that white knight, right? The white knight in shining armor, come save me.
Right, because that's just another bad relationship.
Exactly.
Right? Nobody needs that. Nobody wants that. Well, we do. Wait a minute. I'm certain that is a pattern I've worked on for myself. But it isn't functional, right? And it's not as if we have to say, I have to rely solely on myself or anything like that. We don't have to take it all on ourselves. But let's stop proving to ourselves that the universe is willing to do things for us by creating really scary situations. Because that just it just doesn't feel good. It's just not joyful.
It's unsustainable, and it's actually like having to work all of those energetic muscles harder, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I think one of the ways that we kind of fill ourselves up is to look for those solutions outside of us. In other words, to prove that God, that's what I call my higher power. You can call it whatever you want, rock, tree, blah, blah, blah. I don't care, right? It knows who I am because look, I've had a miracle. Instead of going, God knows who I am, and how do I want to play with it all, including the resource of money. And I think that is, I think that happens because we're not willing to do the consistently inner work and grow that relationship. We're all, not all, but there's a consistency of people wanting that magic pill. The problem with the magic pill, and there's some magic pills, they work temporarily, but then you get addicted to the medicine. You have to have more medicine, and then eventually it doesn't work because you built up this immunity to it. Mm-hmm. So what we're talking about here is new foundations, new sustainabilities. That's transcendence. It actually transcends that relationship. And you're so amazing at helping people do that. And I think that's what, if people really want to create transformation, that's the way they got to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we need to pop into a break here, but when we come back, let's start talking about how we can start building the foundation of that brand new money relationship. All right. So you're listening to the Dr. Pat Show. I'm your fill-in guest, host, I suppose is a better word for that, Jennifer Bloome with Jennifer Urezzio, and we'll be back soon. Fantastic. So you are listening back with me, Jennifer Bloome, filling in for Dr. Pat, and my guest, Jennifer Urezzio. And we are talking all about the heartbreak of money and what it can look like in your day-to-day life. And now let's get to the solution. We kind of got going in that direction before we went to break, but let's really dive in and start just talk about how can we start to turn this dynamic around. So anything that we've been doing for a long time has some pretty significant momentum behind it, right? I mean, our thoughts, our actions, they really push us forward. And so what we want to do is ease that momentum back and start momentum towards a brand new understanding. And I think that, one of the issues here is that because our history with money starts when we're so small, we don't even realize what's possible, right? What's possible is as we talked about, is kind of how our family has handled money. And so really part of that process of starting the new momentum is understanding that there's something so much bigger possible in our relationship with money than we've ever allowed ourselves to think about.
Yeah. You know, as you were talking, I was reflecting back to my best friend. He's just turned 15, but when he was little, we would play drive up. Of course, I was the window girl. And he would drive up and he would do his order and he would go like this. And I was like, what is this? And he goes, it's my American Express card. Now he's 4.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, well, don't you have any cash? Don't you have any money?
Is
He's
it the
like,
black card? Because it's the black card, it goes everywhere, right?
what? Like,
Yeah, okay.
and
He's
I'm
a
like,
baller. He's a baller.
but I'm like, so he's like, no, I have my card. And I was like, oh, okay. So I took Aaron aside. I was like, listen, you got to show this kid what money is, because he just keeps handing me this card. And I don't think he understands, and though he's 4, that he's going to have to pay that card back.
Right.
So she's like, okay. So we gave him money, and then everything was $3. I have $3. No, you have a 1 and a 1. No, I have $3. So I think that there is this way to re-educate ourselves, both on an energetic internal and external level. I think that people don't really kind of understand money in the tangible way, in the energetic way. And so I think the first thing that we always do is kind of have that conversation with people about, you know, what are some of those fundamental beliefs or themes that you had in your family, and why are they really not true? Like, why are they based on experience rather than true? What's newly possible there, and how to go about healing that divide inside of you around having your heart broken as a little kid.
Absolutely. And beginning to understand that just because it happened doesn't mean that it is true, in the sense that it's truth with a capital T.
Right.
It was an experience with a small e, and not truth with a capital T. And the truth with a capital T is you can arrange your flow of money in whatever way you want. And I love, one of the things that I absolutely love about money, and I came to this kicking and screaming, you know that, but money is a phenomenal teacher of the divine.
Yeah.
And it's powerful because you get real results in real time, right? If we say we want to connect more, yeah, it feels good and I feel closer and all of that. And with money, I can literally watch my bank account go up and down.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we acknowledge that money can be here as a way to learn, and not because we need to learn something. I don't mean that, but it is our way of learning how to reconnect at a brand new level.
Yeah, you know, it's direct relationship about how you feel about yourself and your connection with the divine.
Yeah.
No judgment, by the way. So, you know, so often people use that to abuse themselves. I'm not good enough, blah, blah, blah. But what it's really teaching you is how you're using your energetic declaration of how to bend the universal goo in the direction you want it to go. And so when you kind of start to play with that, and listen, we all need reminders, and you need those tools and practices that are going to remind you about this. One of the things that I love to do with clients is to do the penny game, like get 100 pennies, right? Put 3 cups. When you're thinking about, you know, something painful with money, you drop the penny in a cup. When you're thinking about expansion, you drop a penny in a cup. And when you are worried about the future, you drop a penny in the cup. And at the end of the day, let's see how many pennies you have in expansion. Very tangible to show you where you're putting your money energy in a very clear way. And then you can start to go, okay, so I had this thought. Okay, so what's really true? How do I know that is the true, actually, with a big T? and what new choice energetically can I make in this moment?
Yeah. And I think that, a lot of times when I start working with people, they want the to-do steps, right? What am I going to do? How am I going to get back out there? What is it how do I move money around in the real world? And we pause, we take a breath, and right, the first work really is that inner work. It's that internal being state that either feels expansive, right, as you're talking about with the pennies, or contracting where it's feeling more like pain. And we don't have to be perfect with those inner thoughts. We only have to get, just beyond that 50% mark in terms of feeling expanded rather than contracted for things to start to change in our outer environment. So part of healing that heartbreak is giving yourself permission to do that inner work.
Yeah.
And to know that every moment that you spend in a feeling state, in feeling expansive around money, is creating. I can feel the God goo at this point, changing and shifting and changing. But even if you could imagine that, or you know that as you are in that space of thought, in that expansive thought, that you are literally making changes that are going to, right, that are going to come into the bank account at a later time. Because there's no, let me be careful about how I say this, because there's no magic here, right? We're working with the laws of the universe, and yet there's all kinds of magic because
Yeah.
we're working with the laws of the
Right.
universe, right?
And I think it's about being consistent again. And I think it's about being focused and declaring, not judgmental. And then there are tangible things to do, like let's get your house in order. Like
Yeah.
let's look at this. I mean, one of the things when we do our money program and when you do it online, we make people make in quotes go through their bills. Like let's, and everyone freaks out. Well, if you keep putting your head in the sand, you're not really allowing the new energy to take shape. You've got to clean some of the mess up so new things can flow in, not in a judgmental way. But let's really talk about where you are. And so, we can make some solid decisions. You understand that you just don't need more money, that you can really direct the universal good.
Absolutely. How many times do people say, I just want to win the lottery, and then I don't have to worry about any of it anymore, right? And
Then
I
there's
had a
bigger problems.
And there's right, and I had a colleague who said, she didn't like doing accounting. She didn't like doing her bills, and she's like, I would just really rather make more money than to pay attention to what's going on behind the scenes. And that, of course, didn't ever work because she was always having to do a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, right? So the more you can have clarity about where you are, the better. And having gone through this step several times, the amount of freedom, like that weight that comes off of you, you don't even realize
Right.
how much pressure you're leaving on yourself when your financial house, so to speak, is messy and out of order. And again, no judgment.
No
Right?
judgment. But it also provides an additional container, right, for you to focus that energy. If you keep consistently forgetting about the insurance bill every month, right, because you're not aware, you're not declaring, let's set up a new vessel for you to declare about it. This is an opportunity for you to be profoundly loved, and most of us are so scared of that, right? So let's stop utilizing money to continually break your heart and to continually prove to yourself that, you're not worthy.
Yeah. I mean, what could that feel like? Just imagine, what could that feel like to use the power of money to be in that state of love and bliss, right? Everything that's really amazing about a new relationship or even a sustained relationship, right? I think about my marriage, my 30-year marriage, there are moments of just sitting back going, whoa, how do we do this? Right? But what if money could provide that same quality and depth of being seen and loved? Ah, Wow. Okay. Well, on that note, let's take our final break, and when we come back, let's do some more talking about tips and how people can really get in there and start coming back after money has broken their heart. So you're listening to the Dr. Pat Show. I'm Jennifer Bloome, and we'll be back shortly. Ah, yes, the classic, the classic. All right, well, we're back talking about coming back after money broke your heart, whether you live in a rich man's world or not. I'm Jennifer Bloome, and my host, guest Jennifer Urezzio. Got those words, I don't know, tangled up somewhere in my brain today. I don't know. All right, so let's keep talking solutions. And, you mentioned a little while ago something that I want to bring back more to the forefront of the conversation. There are lots of ways, lots of programs out there, lots of people who are out there to help you with your money, right? There's a lot of different choices that you can make, and a lot of good choices you can make. And the thing that I want to bring out is you talked about the magic pill versus creating a foundation. And it's something that you and I both feel really strongly about, because there are a lot of magic pills out there. People telling you, oh, take this course, and everything will be fixed and it'll be great, 30 days and everything will be fantastic. Just clear this little bit out of your history and, everything will be fine. And, I certainly have participated, and I know that I've gotten assistance in lots of ways, right? I do think that others can kind of come in and help and find beliefs and or release them or clear whatever, I don't know, patterns we might have going on. But the real that only works for a little while, because we come back to ourselves. We come back to our expectations. And with a lot of trial and error, what I have found out is that the thing that really works is reestablishing a foundation with money, and doing that again, that inner work to come back to that foundation, and to really allow yourself to step in and say, I'm the one who's in charge of this money relationship. In the money relationship, there's you, there's the energy of money, and there's the divine. Energy of money and divine, no free will, right? None, zip zero. They do, it does, however you want, whatever pronoun you want to use, follows your direction.
Yeah, I think those, and I was thinking about when you were talking, I was like, oh, they're like the Thigh Master of courses. I think those Thigh Master of money courses work because they're your kind of, or the participant is actually capitalizing on that person's will for a little while, right? But then you need to kind of start your own engine, and that's harder to do when your foundation is still cracked. And so the way you do that is you create a new foundation, and that takes consistency, and it takes practice, and it takes discovery, and it also takes a knowledge that as you're growing and you want to call in more goodness, these things that have bothered you in the past are going to bother you again, just in a slightly different way. But because you have a foundation, then you know that you have kind of a safe harbor to go to.
Right. You have something to fall back on. And what you're falling back on is your new truth about what money really is. Because if I can stand in my own beingness and say that money is of the divine, source is the source of my money, and I know that, like I literally have embodied that, when a new bill comes in, I get to, instead of, or maybe after the first few moments of going, I get to say, wait a minute, I have a choice. But I get to it's hard to make that choice, as you say, if your foundation is cracked, because you don't, there's no resiliency. It's just gonna crumble, and then you just end up recreating that same pattern over again, and you have double the heartbreak because you thought you'd gotten into a new place.
You thought you fixed it, and now
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
not fixed. And now you don't know what's wrong with you because you can't be in a relationship, right? So I had this boyfriend, and that's being nice to call him a boyfriend, that told me that I was really bad at relationships.
Oh.
Oh, and
Oh.
so I believed I was really bad at relationships until
Mhm.
I realized, no, my picker was off. I'm really good at relationships, right? You know, I'm consistent and I care and like I show up and all of those things. And I think it's the same thing with any type of relationship. And since your relationship with money is a reflection of how you feel about your own divinity and the divine and receiving that much love, right? Those foundations need to be fixed.
Yeah, yeah, because it really does take a lot of strength to receive love. I
Yeah.
isn't that interesting? And money is just one of those ways, not in the, oh, I want you to love me, so I'm buying you a bunch of gifts kind of love, but that true reflection of I am a unique strand of the divine and I have unlimited access to these resources. And so here I am using these resources. Whoa, it's playing as the divine. That's, I would have said crazy at one point, but it's crazy good. Yes?
Yeah, totally crazy good. And I think that's why people to start to have that new foundation really need to start to look at that relationship between them and the divine. And what do they really think about the divine or feel about the divine? Do they treat divine like Santa Claus? You know, naughty or nice list.
Yeah,
You know, is it
so
the
true.
white knight in shining armor? You know, is it, you know, oh, I know that's out there, but I can't name it, or it doesn't work, or, you know, I know I'm supposed to feel something. Like, really start. I mean, that's one of the things, the major things we do with people is really help them understand, come to a new relationship with their own divinity so they can access and declare their universal good, which in return creates a new foundation with money.
Beautiful. So we are rapidly running out of time here in our
Yeah.
conversation. So you and I, we could talk about this for days. So I want to give a few resources for people. If your interest is piqued and you know that you're ready to start working on that relationship, I want to mention a couple, and then then I'll let you jump in. So one of them is, if you go to my website, which is jenniferbloome.com, I have a money relationship quiz. It's free to take. And what it's going to do is it's going to help you understand where your relationship needs a little bit of tweaking in order to come back into wholeness. Okay, so that's something that that you can do. The other thing that I want to mention is that Jennifer and I have taught a course called Coming Back After Money Broke Your Heart number of times, and we have shifted it into an online format, so it's much easier. You can do it at your own speed, and it touches on many of these different areas. So Jennifer, you want to talk about where people can find that?
Sure. If you go to the Soul Language site at soullanguage.us, on the homepage right there, there's a video you can click on, watch it, it's free. Or you can go to soullanguage.us/spiritual money management /. The videos really gives you a really down and dirty tip to start actually creating a new relationship with money here and now. And the other thing I also suggest is get a budgeting system, not to force you to budget, but to really understand when your bills are due and what you're paying so you can take your head out of the sand. It's a real tangible tool. Throughout doing that process, you have to keep filling yourself with safety and with love.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if the other piece that I would offer here is keep coming back to this knowing that you are the one in charge, right? As you have experiences with money, you get to ask again, no judgment, judgment-free zone. Okay, what's the choice now? What if I really believed that money and love were synonymous, what choice could I make now? Right? So if there is one other thing in 15 seconds that you would like people to know, what would it be?
And know that you're whole and complete and start feeling, expressing, and acting on it.
And there it is. And money just gets to be that part. of playing in helping us remember that we are whole and complete. So on that note, I want to thank you so much for playing with me here. I'm going to encourage everyone to go to the Soul Language site, take a look, learn more about what Jennifer has to offer. She is a phenomenal resource and a phenomenal coach in so many ways. So thank you all for playing here as I got the fun of filling in for Dr. Pat. And until we all meet again, I wish each and every one of you prosperous blessings. Take care, everybody.